Always the suspense. Now we're apparently live with hello with Adcock.
Hello, Susie Godsey. We had a few technical things, but we're here.
We're here, we made it, yay.
You.
A few, exactly.
I must have been expecting something of my computer that it couldn't create.
Well, there you go. See, this is sometimes what we expect. We expect things to work the way that they worked before, and sometimes they just don't do that. And that's exactly what we're talking about today, too, with our animals. Because I don't know about you, Viv, but I've worked with a lot of people that have had animals before, like they had a dog before, the dog died, they got a new one. And now they're comparing, like, well, my old dog did this and my new dog doesn't do that. Or my old dog was so wonderful in this area and my new dog is not. And, so to me, that's always been interesting that people would even go there, because every dog, every cat, every horse is an individual, and there's no comparison. It's just like with us. I mean, you can't compare us to one another really and say, well, with siblings too, you can't say, well, your brother is like this, although parents do that too. But again, it sort of is a very strange concept that we're trying to go into and expect something because someone else is doing it, so really truly, like, what all are the expectations that you have of your animal? And have you ever even thought about asking, can my animal deliver that?
Yeah, and that's a great place to start. I mean, this whole comparison thing, if you've had a fantastic horse that's done X, Y, and Z, and your children have learned to ride on it, or it's won competitions or prize money or whatever that is, that we, unbeknownst, if we still carry those expectations, our animals can be really aware of that. I mean, how would it be if somebody expected something of you that you couldn't deliver because the last person did it, and it's funny, I had a client on Saturday, a human client, two-legged client, and that's what occurred. She'd been promoted into a role and they were constantly comparing her to the lady that was there before. So what would that create in her world? Does that give her a sense of confidence and a sense of value, that who she is and what she brings to the table? Does that give her the soil to grow and fertilize and be greater in, or does it create that doubt and insecurity? So how often do we project that at our animals or even ourselves, having those expectations of ourselves? And the weird thing about expectations is often we don't realize we have them until they're not fulfilled. So then what do you do, Susie, when you realize you have an expectation that's not being fulfilled and you realize you are comparing to an animal you've had before?
Well, I personally, of course, use the tools of Access Consciousness and the clearing statement for that, because it's the fast track to change, and so basically just, we call it POC and potting. You're POC and potting my points of views that I have, my expectations that I have. So literally just going, okay, all the expectations that I have of my animal today, yesterday, and tomorrow, I'll destroy and uncreate it all times a gazillion. Right and wrong, good and bad, pod and pock, all nine shorts, boys, povats, and beyonds. And if you want to know more about all these words, go to theclearingstatement.com. And it gets explained there. But just know that this is a way to ask the energy to go back to wherever this point of view was created and undo it there. And it really works. And if you play with this a little bit, you can recognize that it works. And also you can then clear all those expectations off of your animal. You can say, so everything I've projected on you, all the expectations I have of you, let's destroy and uncreate it times a gazillion. Right and wrong, good and bad, pod and pock, all nine shorts, boys, povats, and beyonds. And that literally can also change your relationship to your animal. If you do that even just every day, nothing bad can happen from this. The only thing that can occur from this is that your life with your animal is going to get greater and easier. Because like Viv says, if the are expectations that cannot be fulfilled, it really creates that sense of, yeah, I don't even know what to call it, because animals don't function like we do. And a lot of the words that we're using to describe our emotions don't really work in the animal world. But we've used the word confidence, and I think that's a good one. Is it confidence building for an animal if we're constantly expecting things it cannot deliver? Or is the animal lacking that confidence and sort of, and here it goes, the animal will seem like it's depressed, but to me, depressed animals, it's not the same as when a person is depressed, because a lot of times, it requires thoughts, and animals don't think in the way that we think. Can an animal be depressed? Yes, but it's different from a person being depressed. So, and I've seen many animals that were showing those signs of depression. And then when we would clear some of those expectations, would start to really come alive, and it's incredible when we're actually changing a point of view with our animals, how quickly things can turn around and change.
Yeah, and that you also brought up something for me too. It's like, if, say, an animal has been bred for a specific, it's come from a long line of successful, I don't know, let's say show jumpers, or it could have been a show dog or something that won a lot of races, or there can be this unspoken expectation because of its pedigree or its breeding or its predecessors or whatever that is, that's also projected onto the horse or the dog or the cat or the show animal. And so they come out and it's like, well, actually, I'm choosing to come out a very different being. I'm not actually here to change the horse racing industry or the fancy chicken show or whatever it is, because they have their own choices. And I think this is something else that it's completely new to a lot of people. It's like, what do you mean they choose? I had a horse that I work with that was bred to be a particular stallion, to breed a particular line of horses. And there was something, I don't know, conformity, its body, its conformation wasn't up to standard. So they made a choice at a very, very young age that this horse was then going to be, this stallion was going to be gelded. So it had all of these conflictual realities in regards to, and this horse was 8 when I went to see it. So it had spent 8 years not feeling good in itself and, getting into all sorts of trouble, quote unquote, with its owner, because it had all of these projections on it that it was supposed to be the latest and greatest, delivering these amazing little foals and amazing bloodlines and amazing whatever. And it couldn't. It was castrated at a very young age, but it had all of these conflictual points of view from the projections and expectations of the breeders. So who would know that an 8-year-old gelding that was still totally behaving like a stallion, but was really quite sour in himself because of all of this stuff? You just don't know how it can show up. So this is where I love the tools of access. You get to ask the animal the question. You get to ask them as you would a person, hey, what's gone on? Do you know where this is coming from? Have you had this come up before? Do you can talk to a person, but they'll often give you information that they're logically thinking about, not energetically connecting to. Whereas the animal, when you're clear with the ability to communicate, can give you very succinct, very clear answers. And often their behavior is the way of trying to get you to ask questions and not come to conclusion about what's showing up.
Yep, absolutely. And, this is really truly also why I just love all these tools, because they can give you so much ease in such a short amount of time, and oftentimes can really change things that are not changeable through training, are not changeable through other ways of working with an animal, because there's a lot of things you can do to basically try and change a behavior and make an animal, do things that you are asking for. But yet, when there is something underlying like this, it may not ever work. You may try and try and try with different ways and different trainers and different people. And yet, the underlying issue is something completely different. And oftentimes, really truly, we have seen it so many times, like in our classes and with clients, like sometimes literally one POC and POD and one awareness can change a lot of things. And that's always so fascinating to me. And you see the animal change in front of your eyes, you know, when you're lifting up some expectations like that, you know, or just even changing an animal's outlook on life. You know, we worked with a gelding as well at some point who had also a lot of different expectations put on him, but also he had this idea that he was going to have a lot of babies, and he was gelded also very early on. And so, you know, you cannot reverse that. I mean, we're not bringing a gelding back, you know, to a stallion and that sort of thing. You know, so you might think, well, I'm basically stuck now. You know, how do I reverse a decision that was made 8 years ago? But the interesting thing was, we asked him if he could contribute to young horses with his energy, and he hadn't really considered that as a possibility. And so the next day, it was a 2-day class. The next day he came in and people didn't recognize him because he had completely changed. His coat was shiny. He had grown. His chest was out and really big. His head was up and proud. He pranced into the arena, whereas the day before he kind of just walked in there like a downtrodden sort of animal. And to me, that was incredible because all the participants, even horse people, were like, who is this? You know, like they hadn't seen him before. And, you know, so, and I stayed in touch with his owner, and he really stayed that way for the rest of his life. You know, this was 10 years ago. So, you know, he stayed like this forever. He actually became a proud horse, you know, and, he was always a kind horse. He was always willing to deliver everything, but he was always a bit like down and low, you know, and all of a sudden he was alive. He was willing to be alive, you know, and happy to live and all that. And it made such a big difference. So, you know, and it wasn't a whole lot that we did that day, maybe 10 minutes we worked on him, you know. It was incredible, the change that showed up. So, yeah.
And
don't underestimate your expectations. Yeah, go ahead, Viv. And by the way, your audio is funny all of a sudden. It's crackly. So I don't know what happened there. But anyway, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
All good. And it's, I mean, for the audience watching, you can probably relate to this. Also applies to people as well. And the tools also apply to people. It's just that people tend to hold on to stuff a bit longer than animals. Animals are willing to just, I don't want to walk around with this. This doesn't make me feel light and full of my being. And so this is where those expectations or those projections, and when people, you know, you're not delivering what they expect of you, you sense that, you know, you sense that you try harder and you give more. And if it's still not received, you know how that is in your world. If somebody's not receiving the gift or the contribution that you're trying to be, you know, it's kind of a bit deflating and a bit flattening. And after a while, you stop trying, you know, but there's still that part of you that desires to shine and be received and have that amazing exchange. So this is what you're saying, Susie, with this horse, where his being was actually received. Him, the being, the value wasn't placed on what he was doing or not doing. He was actually reached and received in a very different way, which is such an honoring. And if we could be that for each other a lot more, we'd have a very different planet.
Oh, right. Yeah. And I mean, for us too, you know, I mean, so many parents, and they don't do it out of being malicious, but you know, even when you're born, people are analyzing you right away. What's going to become of you? Who are you going to be in life? You know, instead of really waiting and looking and seeing well, of course, then they have to wait and see and look, but still the expectations are there. You know, I remember too, like, you know, you bang around on some pots and people are like, oh, are you going to be a drummer? You know, no, I'm not going to be a drummer. I just like to make some noise, you know, like, I mean, it's just so crazy how quickly we go down that road. And so, you know, the more, and Viv, you said it before, but the more you as a person are willing to actually look at what am I expecting of my animal right now, you know, and really maybe asking your animal, and this is especially if you're having some issues going on, you know, ask your animal, am I expecting something of you that you cannot deliver? Is there something up here that, you know, is in my world that you actually have a hard time with? What is going on, you know? And even if you say, well, I can't hear my animal, you will get a sense of it. And it's not so much about trying to really have a quote unquote conversation, but it's really about perceiving an energy. Is it sort of creating a bit more lightness in your world even when you ask that question? Is it opening a door energetically? Is it making you maybe have more peace in your world when you ask that question? And if that's the case, then probably there are some expectations you have. And then you can really say, okay, all the expectations that I have, let's destroy and uncreate them all. Times a gazillion, right and wrong, good and bad, pod and pock, all nine, short spurs, pulvats and beyonds. So please, you know that it can be that simple. And if you do that every day, see what changes and see if there is a shift and change with the relationship that you guys have, you know. So that would be one way to play with this.
And just before we hop off, if you are brand new to Susie and I and you're wondering what those strange words are, you can go to www.theclearingstatement.com and you'll get a really interesting explanation by two very dear friends of ours as to what on earth that whole hocus pocus gobbledygook language is. And it works. It's weird, it's wacky, it's designed to bypass the logical mind, and it works. It changes the energy instantly. How does it get any better? Thank you, Miss Susie.
Thank you, Viv. And please stay tuned. Find us again. We will keep doing these lives, even if we don't announce them always, but maybe subscribe wherever you are right now. Put a notification, subscribe, and find us again. We will be back with more ideas and more tips and more wacky things that you can do to change your relationship with your animals. So thank you all so much for watching and see you next time.